Hello guys, and welcome back to Getting Started with LabVIEW. And in today's example, we will look into how to insert a data into an Access database using LabVIEW. In the previous video tutorial, we have actually explored an example on how to read Access database and display the data into a table control. In today's example, we will actually look into how we can actually insert using the database insert function. So if we go into the connectivity palette and database, you can actually see here that there is a function here called database tool insert data. So today we will use this API to insert data into the Access database. Now, as you all know that in the previous video, we actually need to establish a connection string for Access, and also we also have a example of a database location here. So just to save time, I have already created the connection string here, which later we will be combining this and insert into the open database function. First, what we need to do is we actually need to insert a table control. So let's go into the table control here, and we put in the expand the values here. And as usual, whenever you are actually reading data, most of the time your data would have a column header. So let's go into the properties of the table and show column header. So you can see the column header has already been added here. Next, what we need to do is we actually need to check the Access database. So I have the example database that we will be using. So as you can see, it actually has 4 columns: the ID, first name, last name, and email address. So we will be using this information and insert into this database. So obviously we need to have the first name, last name, and email address field here. So to do that, let's create a string control, which we will be using this string control here. We have the first name, we have the last name, and of course the email address. So this is just a demonstration, and we don't really need to make it as perfect as possible, because this is just to show how to insert a database, and which later on you can actually use this to modify whatever that you actually want to do. So now once we actually have this, we have the table control. Let's change this to indicator, because we only just want to display a data. Next, we need to concatenate this string. First, we actually have to go to the connectivity, and we need to open the connection. So first we need to need this API. Let's say visible, easiest for the, we need to open, and we actually need to close it. We actually have to close it, and once we have the opening and the closing, and this is where we actually need to do the magic, which is the insert section here. And once we have insert the data, we actually need to select the data to be displayed, and whenever you have a data to be displayed, you also need to put it here, which is the database variant to data. So we actually need to establish a connection, insert the data, and then we need to select the entire data and display it on a table control. So this is how it actually should be the flow. And once we have this, I also need to know that what kind of column information that I actually need. So to do that, I actually need to use the function utility, if I'm not mistaken, it's the list column. Okay, so let's connect this. Alright, visible label is easier to see this way. What kind of function is actually being used? Oops. Now we need to put in establish the connection string. This is the connection information, so let's use the concatenate string here. You need to have the connection string followed by the location, of the file path. This is where we define it as the source, and we put it here into the connection string. Okay, so once you have this into the connection string, next we actually need to know what is the table name. So in the example of the access, we know that the table name is actually contact table, as you actually have seen. So let's just call this contact table. Contact table, and we need the name of the table so that we can actually return the array of column which we're going to be displaying into the table. So let's say column, this is an array of columns, so I don't want the ID column, so let's put this index array. Sorry, this is an array subset. I shouldn't be getting the index. Array subset, because this function here retrieves the entire column, and I only just want the column starting from first name, last name, and email address. So I do not need the ID information, and it should actually start at index 1. So this will actually return, and we need to feed this into the column. Next, here also requires a table, what table that is actually being used, so let's put it here. And lastly, for the select data is also table as well. And once that is done, put a database variant. Let's create a constant here, remove the value because you need to define the variant type displayed. Once that is done, now remaining is how do you insert the value into the database tool insert data. In this section, you can see here it actually has a variant data, which means you can actually just input data directly into it. But because this is the column for each values, we can actually use the bundle. We can actually use the bundle function, and it will actually fit into the data as well. Let's put this first name, last name, email address, and we can immediately put it into the data. Okay, now that is done, let's test this VI. So before I run the VI, let me put my name here as this, and maybe probably create a fake email address. So let's run this. So you can see the index 9 has already been created because this database has been used several times. So you can see the index actually increments automatically. And if, let's say, if I want to add another name here, probably let's put in as Jerry Smith. Jerry Smith at gmail.com, and if you run again, you can see it's actually being added. So this is an example on how we can actually insert data into Access database using LabVIEW by using the database tool insert data function. So this is a function that is actually available, and probably this is considered to be one of the simplest way of actually inserting data into Access database. But of course, there are other options as well where you can actually use an SQL query. You can actually see that under the utility palette here, if you go in, you can actually see, under the advanced palette here, you can see there's a function called dbTools execute query. And this function requires SQL parameter input. SQL query. So if in case if you don't really want to use tools insert, you can actually use this as well. But this actually requires some knowledge of SQL query.